They said it was an exclusive event, the kind of gathering where the walls could kill you and the attendees already had. The Deathworld Summit wasn't about peace or compromise or Federation-wide resolutions. It was about recognition. Only those forged in planetary hellscapes were allowed to speak at the table. Planets where gravity crushed the weak, atmosphere tore apart lungs, and predators weren't animals, they were the environment. There were only 9 species permitted to attend. 9 races from Class V or 6 Deathworlds who had not only survived their birthplaces but thrived in them. Their pride was built on statistical extinction. For centuries, they had laughed at the galaxy's softer worlds, called them cradles, called their people children. Then someone made a mistake. The humans were invited. No one took it seriously. Some claimed it was a clerical oversight. Others believed it was political theater. One Krell official joked that including Earth was like inviting a puddle to a volcanic ritual. There was laughter. That was before the human vessel arrived. It didn't enter orbit with fanfare. It didn't transmit greetings or docking codes. It materialized above the summit station like a ghost ship. Matte black. No transponders. No name. Just presence. The Council's orbital defense grid registered it 5 seconds too late. Every AI flagged it as unknown class. The Summit Security Command labeled it unresolved threat. By then, the airlock had already opened. They walked in like they had always belonged. 6 of them. No uniforms. No insignia. Unarmed, according to scanners, yet no one believed it. Their eyes didn't search the room. They already knew it. Their posture wasn't tense. It was disinterested. The Krell Warfather stood up to introduce himself with a customary growl. The human nearest him blinked. The Warfather stopped mid-sentence. No violence. No words. He sat down and didn't speak again for the rest of the day. The summit moderators tried to re-establish order. Introductions were made. Representatives took turns reciting the histories of their death world. Zarn spoke of flesh-melting rains and gravity wells. Torvax described neural predators that hijacked the brain stem before birth. The Oscari described their oceans of acid and spore storms. Each one raised the stakes, expecting the humans to offer a lesser tale. They said nothing. No Earth delegation responded. Not even to acknowledge the insults. When it was their turn to speak, the human delegate simply adjusted his collar. No translation was needed. It was the universal gesture of not caring. By the 3rd hour, agitation set in. The Council's administrator, a diplomatic veteran from the Zalari Ascendancy, finally addressed the humans directly. Asked for clarification on their presence. The human answered with a single word: observed. There was no follow-up. The delegate folded his arms and leaned back. The silence that followed was heavy enough to set off seismic monitors. They assumed it was a bluff. The Krell Warfather, annoyed by the non-response, approached the human delegate during recess. He performed the ceremonial threat posture, a combination of roaring, fist-clenching, and exposing weapon implant. The human did nothing. Didn't blink. Didn't flinch. And then the Krell dropped. No visible strike. No movement. Just one moment of defiance, and then a 7-foot apex predator collapsed unconscious. Medical units found no trauma. No toxins. No neural spike. The only consistent finding was a sudden cessation of all aggressive neurological activity. The Warfather awoke 30 minutes later and refused to speak. Summit officials declared an emergency pause. Delegates were ordered to their private chambers for de-escalation. The humans stood up, walked out. 3 Summit security units followed them. 2 minutes later, only one returned. He said nothing. His pulse rate was triple standard. He refused to answer questions. The other 2 were found later, physically unharmed but mentally frozen. One attempted to tear off his own eyes. The other whispered the same phrase for 6 hours. It wasn't human. By the 2nd day, fear had overtaken mockery. The summit's original purpose had collapsed. No one wanted to discuss planetary threats or evolutionary superiority. They wanted to know what the humans were. Every biological scan returned inconsistent data. Slight anomalies in muscle fiber density, neural responsiveness, immune adaptability. Nothing decisive. Yet no one could account for the dissonance. They were supposed to be primitive. Their planet barely registered a Category 4 hazard. Its oceans were safe. Its predators were predictable. And yet, something was wrong. Something didn't add up. Torvak's scientists proposed a test. A joint biological challenge to assess human adaptability. It was wrapped in diplomacy, but everyone knew it was a provocation. They wanted to see the humans fail. Wanted evidence they could use to restore the hierarchy. The challenge was accepted. A chamber was prepared, stocked with apex specimens from all 9 Death Worlds. Creatures evolved to kill anything in seconds. Venomous, armored, sentient in some cases. The chamber was 30 meters wide, sealed, monitored, and lethal. The human entered alone. No weapon. No armor. No augmentation. The door sealed. 10 minutes passed. One by one, the chamber feeds began to fail. Not from sabotage, but from the AI refusing to process the images. Live viewers caught fragments. Apex predators turning on each other without reason. Shrill sounds none could identify. Movement patterns that made no sense. By the time the chamber opened, all 9 predators were dead. The human stood in the center, breathing evenly. No wounds. No blood on him. Someone asked what happened inside. The human said, "Nothing unusual." The summit fell into chaos. The Oscary representative accused the humans of telepathic manipulation. The Torvaks claimed hidden tech. Zolari war analysts demanded an immediate security lockdown. The humans walked back to their assigned chamber without responding. At this point, the summit lost all pretenses of diplomacy. They were afraid. But fear breeds anger. Another challenge was issued, this time a psychic probe. Torvak's neural architects volunteered to enter a human mind. It was approved reluctantly. The humans didn't stop it. They didn't even look concerned. The probe began. 4 Torvaks entered a meditative state, linked with the human delegate's cognitive signature. They lasted 13 seconds. All 4 collapsed, bleeding from the nose and ears. One clawed at its own skull. Another begged to be killed. The last simply whispered, "There is no structure. Just storms." None of them ever returned to baseline. The council chamber erupted. Accusations flew. A demand was issued. Humans must reveal their homeworld's real classification. That kind of psychological profile couldn't emerge from a class 4. That kind of suppression couldn't evolve in peacetime. A new data packet was presented by the Zolari historians. A compilation of Earth's history. Images of world wars. Chemical weapons. Genocides. Nuclear standoff. Social collapse. Reconstruction. More collapse. More reconstruction. War again. And again. Every galactic species had their dark ages. But this was something else. The humans watched quietly. One delegate finally spoke. "That was before we got organized." The summit had never been this quiet. The next morning, the humans didn't speak. They arrived precisely on time, took their assigned seats, and waited. That alone disturbed the others. No visible anxiety. No bodyguards. No displays of power. It was the silence of something that didn't need to roar. The Zolari motioned to reconvene the summit with a proposal, reassess the entire structure of Death World classification. Thinly veiled panic masked as procedure. The humans didn't argue. They simply listened. When asked if Earth should now be reclassified, one of them offered a short reply. "You do what you need to. We already know what we are." That sentence left every biometric scanner blinking in confusion. Pulse rates among delegates spiked. The humans never raised their voices, never threatened anything. But each word felt like an edge pressed, just lightly enough against skin to remind them it was sharp. The Krell suggested that perhaps Earth was an anomaly, A freak evolution, more luck than design. The humans disagreed. They provided footage. It wasn't from military archives. It was civilian. Urban collapse zones. Riot footage. Casual bystanders running toward danger to help others. Children standing in front of tanks. Civilians shielding strangers with their bodies. Not one species at the summit could understand it. The Krell translated it as insanity. The Oscari called it mass delusion. The humans called it instinct. They showed images of firefighters walking into burning skyscrapers. Doctors operating under gunfire. A girl holding pressure on her own severed leg while telling someone else not to panic. And then war. Not professional soldiers. Grandfathers, parents, volunteers. Entire cities learning combat in weeks. Footage of humans using homemade weapons against orbital threat. Standing firm while staring at extinction. In every frame, death was a guarantee. In none of them did anyone hesitate. Torvak's military sociologists paused the presentation. They'd seen what they needed to. In private, they sent a message to their homeworld. Cease all psychological warfare studies regarding humans. Subject species presents unknown parameters. Recommend full avoidance. But the summit still had a protocol to complete. The final challenge, environmental crossover trials. A test of cross-species survivability in each other's native death world environment. Only the most resilient species had ever survived more than one. The humans volunteered first. Without negotiation. They entered the Zalari frost chambers and sat silently as temperatures dropped. They didn't shiver. In the Oscari spore fields, they were unmasked. The spores didn't infect. They burned, but the humans simply smiled and coughed it out. In the Torvak's neural maze, where most minds fragmented after 10 minutes, the human delegate remained for an hour and left whistling an old tune. The final test was on Krell soil. Gravity 4 times galactic standard. Razor dust storms. Bone parasites. The human walked it for 2 hours. Collected samples. Asked for more time. When the results were compiled, they were impossible. The humans had achieved 100% survivability in all environment. No species in the history of the summit had ever managed 4. The humans had done 9. No augmentation. No chemical prep. Just adaptation. It was then the summit realized something none of them had considered. Earth was not a death world because of its terrain. It wasn't about acid storms or predators or toxins. Earth was dangerous because of its people. The planet had evolved a species that could make hell out of stability, then thrive in the aftermath. A planet of intelligent apex predators who built cities, then warred over them. Cured diseases, then used those cures to build stronger diseases. Found peace, then trained for war during it. A species whose children played games that mimicked combat. Whose elderly trained with weights. Who glorified sacrifice and deified endurance. One delegate from the Oscari asked the humans a question that no one else would. Why are you here? The human didn't blink. We wanted to see if any of you were ready. That broke the summit. The Zalari called for emergency diplomatic withdrawal. The Krell began encrypting fleet command code. The Torvaks uploaded every known file on Earth to their war colleges. The Oscari sent a stealth ship back to their homeworld. No message, just a launch. The humans left the chamber before adjournment. But before leaving, they placed a data crystal on the table. It contained exactly 3 things. The first, a full scan of their ship showing 0 armament. Every system designed for speed, durability, and stealth. No weapons. Not one. Because they didn't need any. The second, a genetic log of every human present. Their DNA showed centuries of intermixing. No pure bloodlines. No stability. Just chaos forged into strength. Variable genomes constantly adapting in real time. They weren't perfect because of control. They were powerful because of failure. The final file, a map. Not of Earth. Of every planet the humans had visited since achieving interstellar flight. It was extensive. And most of them weren't charted on galactic map. Some of those systems showed destroyed outposts. Others, silent colonies. A few were marked as lost worlds, places where summit species had failed to survive. But the humans had left notes on each one. Tactical breakdowns, environmental hazards, weak points, suggested terraforming adjustments. One Zalari scholar translated the footnotes aloud. They weren't exploring, she whispered. They were studying how to beat us. The humans didn't say goodbye. They didn't threaten retaliation. They simply walked out of the summit hall and vanished. No warp signature. No hyperspace trace. Just gone. The Krell Warfather attempted to restore dignity to the summit, demanded a new security protocol. He was ignored. The Oscary representative declared humans an uncontrolled existential variable. The Torvax submitted a motion to end all contact immediately. The Zalari abstained from everything. Not out of diplomacy, but survival. Within 24 hours, summit leadership disbanded. What remained was panic. Entire fleets redirected their training programs to simulate human contact. Psychological analysts requested permission to study captured Earth media. They tried to find patterns, reasons, anything to explain what they'd seen. They failed. Because humans weren't created in balance. They weren't born from harmony or gradual evolution. They were the accidental miracle of a world that punished failure but rewarded pain. Every other Death World species had adapted to survive. Humans had adapted to win. And now the summit knew. The invitation had never been safe. It had been a test. And the humans had passed. Without lifting a single weapon. Without issuing a single threat. Without raising their voices or starting a war. They hadn't come to kill anyone. They'd come to remind everyone that they didn't need to. Not yet. Inside was a single item, a rock. Dense, black, polished. Unremarkable. Until it was analyzed. The readings were impossible. The molecular structure didn't match anything in the Oscary databases. It bore faint radiation signatures known only to exist inside collapsed neutron stars. The humans had sent them a piece of a star. No one knew how they'd gotten it. No one asked. That single object changed Oscary defense policy overnight. Border patrols were reassigned. Defensive satellites were doubled. Their scientists begged for human cooperation. The diplomats were silenced. No further requests were made. The Zalari tried a different approach. They reached out to neutral species, hoping for third-party insight. A Terrelite academic with mild human contact was brought in. She studied Earth linguistics and myth structures. Her conclusion broke the Zalari assembly. Humans, she said, don't believe in impossible. They believe in time and effort. If they want something, they will build toward it. Or die trying. And death, to them, is not failure. It is a delay. The Torvax analyzed their own data crystal again. They'd initially dismissed the map as observational. But the metadata held a disturbing implication. Some planets had been visited by humans over 50 years ago, before humans had officially achieved faster-than-light travel. The implication wasn't that humans lied about their capabilities. It was that they no longer tracked their own first. What the rest of the galaxy considered milestones, humans treated as warm-ups. A captured signal intercept confirmed it. A human military commander briefing a unit simply said, "Don't treat them like they're a threat. They're still trying to reach where we started." The Torvax initiated a full recall of every operative stationed within 5 parsecs of Earth. All research was reclassified. A quiet note was added to the central database. Engagement inadvisable. Containment impossible. The Krell were less subtle. Their Warfather launched a probe fleet toward Sol. Not to attack, but to test. The ships were unmanned. No weapons deployed. Just passive scans and quiet surveillance. None returned. No explosion. No trace. Only silence. 1 week later, a Krell child on a frontier world found something embedded in the outer wall of their school. A metal shard with no markings. Krell scientists identified it as a fragment from one of the missing probes. It hadn't been vaporized. It had been altered. Metallurgy showed rearranged atoms, deliberate and precise. The message embedded in atomic spin variation said one thing: please don't send toys. We're not children. It wasn't hostile. It was a statement of fact. The Krell stopped all remote observation within 20 light-years. Still, silence wasn't safety. And the vacuum was growing. No one could track the humans anymore. Not because they disappeared, but because they were everywhere. Trade stations reported anonymous cargo haulers that offloaded supplies and vanished. Mining platforms showed spikes in output near human-designed equipment. Communications arrays intercepted messages in no known language that echoed Earth tonal cadence. A translator finally broke the code. The messages weren't military. They were construction logs. The humans were building something. And they weren't hiding it. Because they didn't care who saw. The galaxy began to realize it had misunderstood everything. The humans hadn't walked into the summit to conquer. They'd walked in to measure. To take inventory of the galaxy's strength, unity, fear, and structure. And what they found disappointed them. Not because the galaxy was weak, but because it was predictable. Every species followed patterns. Every government respected territory. Every protocol bowed to committee. And humans had spent centuries breaking their own rules just to stay ahead of extinction. The summit had mistaken savagery for lack of control. But what they witnessed wasn't chaos. It was self-discipline forged in a crucible no alien could replicate. A death world wasn't defined by temperature, predators, or poisons. It was defined by how often its apex species faced extinction and refused to die. The humans had faced it thousands of times, and every time they'd adapted. That adaptability wasn't an edge. It was the weapon. One message leaked from an intercepted human transmission. It was coded deep inside a transport relay outside Kepler's edge. The decrypted text was simple. If they ever unify, we'll be late. Not if. When. The humans weren't afraid of the summit. They were disappointed it hadn't already turned into an empire. Because if it had, it would have been worthy of challenge. They weren't preparing for war. They were preparing for growth. The galaxy just happened to be in the way. The summit tried to repair itself. Emergency councils were convened. New protocols for unpredictable species were drafted. New threat levels were designed. But nothing changed the truth. The humans hadn't attacked. And that terrified everyone more than if they had. Because it meant the humans hadn't started yet. The most terrifying species in the galaxy had been polite, restrained, respectful. Their silence wasn't submission, it was patience. Their cooperation wasn't compliance, it was observation. One Oscary diplomat in a closed meeting broke down. He had been there. He had seen the human walk through the spore field. He whispered a single sentence that no one could explain. They weren't enduring it. They liked it. Every species had its edge. But humans didn't seek safety. They sought adversity. Because adversity was the only thing that made them sharper. The Krell ran a simulation. If humans reached unified galactic expansion with current growth rates, they would outpace the Torvax fleet command in 72 years. Outbuild the Krell industrial capacity in 44. Outmatch the Zalari diplomatic network in 30. But that wasn't the real threat. The real threat was that humans didn't need to match the summit. They'd already found the cracks. And they were walking through. Not to destroy, but to replace. One system at a time, humans became the default choice for outpost defense. Mining contractors used human tech. Lost colonies requested human assistance. Refugees begged to relocate to human space. Because the humans delivered. They didn't just win wars. They rebuilt after them. They didn't just survive death worlds. They made them livable. They didn't just endure pain. They carried others through it. A final report was quietly buried in the Zalari archives, written by a senior strategist who had studied Earth since first contact. It ended with one paragraph. They do not fear war. They do not fear death. They do not even fear extinction. What they fear is stagnation. The day they run out of challenges is the day the galaxy becomes their test lab. And on that day, none of us will have a voice in what happens next. The summit never reconvened, because the summit had never truly mattered. It had been created to maintain balance. But the humans didn't believe in balance. They believed in momentum. And now the galaxy was part of it, not because they agreed, because they weren't strong enough to resist. They invited the humans hoping to understand them. But understanding wasn't safety. It was the beginning of obedience, and the humans had never asked for permission, only patience, which had just run out.